Right as she gets ready to go home, I tweet out, it's just going to be me, God, and the enemy alone in this room for the next 24 hours. I had a sense something was coming. I just wasn't sure what it was. And shortly after that, I fell asleep. I woke up about an hour later, shortly before 9, and I'm as hot as I have been this entire time. And I've got heat rashes up and down my legs. I've got the MRSA antibiotic, each 2 different ones now going in my arms. I'm having allergic reactions to them. I still don't have the blood culture back. I don't know if it's in my system or not. And I just had this overwhelming sensation or conviction that I needed to get up, rise, and walk.
But let's tell the story for people who know nothing. You wrote a book called Nefarious. Let's start at the beginning and take people through so they can really savor every aspect of this story.
About 8 years ago, I wrote a book called A Nefarious Plot, which was meant to be a sequel homage to the Screw Tape Letters about a demonic takeover of America from a being named Lord Nefarious, who was tasked by the devil with destroying the U.S. And in the book, he lays it all out. And the people that wrote God's Not Dead and wrote and produced and directed Unplanned heard about the book, and they thought it would make a terrific movie. And we worked for the last several years. We had lots of challenges to make this movie. They themselves, our 2 writers and directors, Carrie Solomon and Chuck Conselman, were nearly killed with COVID pneumonia during the Delta variant, just as we were beginning to shoot the movie. All kinds we had union strikes in right-to-work states. Our funding dried up. It was a challenge to get to the finish line. And then we finally got there, got the movie in theaters, didn't compromise its witness, water it down at all. And I think you will attest to this. We also just made one heck of a movie. It's not just that the theology is right. It's just that it's a good movie, which makes the theology now more absorbable in that packaging.
Well, look, doing things excellently is not a sidebar issue. It's a central issue. So the fact that you made a film that is actually a good film, it's not just biblically sound, it's not just devoid of the F word and other cursing. No, it's actually a good film and an important film. And our friend John Zmirak has raved about it at stream.org, and John's no pushover when it comes to aesthetics. So it is a good film. You made a good film, and you made an important film. I say important because you say things theologically. You say things about abortion. You say things about, I can't think of any films that are doing this. This film accomplishes that in a brilliant way. So when did the film release?
The week it released on April 14th, the Monday of that release. I had been struggling with a rash in my upper left torso. I thought maybe it was an aggressive deodorant I was using because I was doing a lot of traveling. And you know what that's like. You want to make sure you're fresh throughout the day.
That's why I never ever use deodorant. I don't care. No, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
But on Monday, I just woke up in searing pain. And golf ball-sized cyst had formed in my upper left torso.
Whoa. Golf ball-sized cysts?
Yes.
You need to change your deodorant, my friend.
Yeah,
that's
and
not
I wish it was
effect.
the deodorant.
No, listen, seriously, that's unbelievable. I hadn't heard that detail. So this is days before the launch of the film.
It's the week of the movie's release.
You're traveling to promote the film. It's very, very, very important that you spend all this money and you do all this work, that the film do well in the box office. And so here you're promoting the film, and as you're promoting the film, you wake up with a golf ball-sized cyst. I don't really want to picture that. That is horrifying.
Yes, and what's even more horrifying is it wasn't dermatological. It was a very deadly bacteria known as MRSA, and it's extremely rare to get MRSA infections. We all carry the MRSA bacteria in our body. No one knows how you get it. It's of a mysterious cause and origin. That's the scientific explanation. No one knows what causes this bacteria to go malevolent. It just so happened to go malevolent on me the week our movie came out. They literally had to carve these things out of my armpit, Eric, in the ER. They had to carve them out. And you have to take this very aggressive form of called sulfates. These very aggressive antibiotics, the only antibiotics in the world that really work. And almost every time you get allergic reactions to them. Well, luckily, I was through day 8 of my course, and I had not had any allergic reaction, and the cysts were gone and healing, and so I wasn't even having any discharge anymore. So the doctor cleared me to go ahead and do this Moms for Liberty event, which I had scheduled many months in advance in Rochester, New York. So I hopped on the
hang on a
plane.
second. So you were in the hospital before the Moms for Liberty event. You were in the hospital. Did you have fevers? Did you have anything like that at that point?
Oh, it was dreadful. The pain.
I want to get back to this because I don't want to skip over that to Rochester, because Rochester is just the second part. We'll be right back. We're talking to Steve Deace. The film is Nefarious. You were in the hospital. You said you had all kinds of treatments. You had serious fevers. Talk about that, because you didn't mention that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was delirious. I don't really remember, other than the pain, Eric. I don't remember much of the hospital experience because, I mean, I was out of it. I was passed out for hours in the ER waiting my turn. You know, my wife's tweeting my condition. My small group guys come up to pray over me. I can barely remember that. I just remember it being in pain so much that basically I just passed out. And this went on for hours in the ER before they finally got me back there, and they were literally able to carve these things out of me. And you know, I mean, my fever spiking and everything else. I mean, I just was delirious most of that time.
I remember reading, because I follow you on Twitter, reading your wife's tweets on your behalf. I was like, what the heck is this? I got a phone call from John Zmirak. Have you heard what's going on with Steve Deace? Let's pray. This was very serious, and this is the beginning, okay? So you're telling me that you go through this stuff, you're in the hospital, and you're in the hospital for how long?
I was in the hospital a total of about 10 hours. And and I'm told this is the most painful thing they will do nowadays without putting you under and admitting you is when you get these kinds of cysts and removing them. That's what I was told.
And why wouldn't they put you under?
I don't really know the answer to that. I don't know. I mean, like I said, all I remember is the pain and the agony. I don't remember much of conversations or anything else.
So you had fever, you had these cysts. This is an infection, a mysterious quote unquote infection that strikes you just days before this film comes out. And so you go through this, but they're able to dig this stuff out, and you think you're fine now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not discharging at all. Meaning the cysts have drained of the bacteria in them. I don't even have them covered anymore. And I'm tolerating the antibiotic. I'm having, a few sensations like, chills and stuff, but relatively speaking, it's nothing compared to what I was going through. And so the doctors cleared me to get on the plane on Thursday and go out to Rochester for the Moms for Liberty event.
Okay. So this is 3 days after you went into the hospital. Now you think you're okay. You've been through this bizarre, I mean, and when I read your wife's tweets, it was obvious this was serious. So, but the doctors say, okay, you're good to go now. We've solved the problem. You can fly to Rochester to this event. And again, you're going to be promoting the film.
I'm 1,000 miles from home. We get there the night before, and in the middle of the night, I just start spiking and, the worst fevers I've had yet. I can't even stand. I'm trembling so bad. Finally, when it gets to 100, I'm in this hotel in the city I've never been in, 1,000 miles from home. Finally, my wife, when it gets to 104, calls 911. First time I've ever needed that. I've ever been in an ambulance in my entire life. They make the decision, I need to go in. There is concern that I'm experiencing either some extreme allergic reaction to the medication, or even worse, that maybe they didn't get all the bacteria and it got into my bloodstream before they removed the cysts. And that's when you are what's called sepsis, or a form of blood infection, can require PICC lines in your arm for 3-6 months, lots of treatments. And then,
when an adult man has a fever of 104 degrees, that is called very serious.
Yes.
So obviously we're glad your wife called the ambulance. But again, you are in an airport hotel 1,000 miles from home. Now, where is home for you guys?
West Des Moines, Iowa.
In Iowa, that's right. And so here you are. You go to the hospital 5 a.m. And again, you told the story on your podcast that it was aired yesterday. But this is dramatic stuff. So keep going with this story. You go to the hospital now in Rochester.
I'm in this room. It's not even the size of a closet. This hospital's overflowing. It's Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester. There's gurneys and beds in the ER that are lined up too deep in the hallways. They have no rooms. There's like a giant, like a tarp tent provisional facility out in the back. I have to go there. I have the very last room in this facility in this corner. We can't receive any guests. The bathroom is actually in another building. And they come in and tell me we can't let you go. I mean, the infectious disease doctors won't want us to let you go until we get another blood culture and it comes back negative. We have to make sure you don't have MRSA in your blood. That could kill you. And the problem is it takes 24 hours or longer, since it's the weekend sometimes, for that sample to come in. So there's a chance that I might be with just me and my wife away from home, our kids, for days in this makeshift room that's barely a closet, awaiting results that may indicate that I have a serious blood infection that threatened my life. I mean, it was just beyond, I can't, it's the most, I became a Christian 20 years ago, Eric. But I know what discouragement is like. I grew up in an abusive home. I know what it's like to feel defeated. I've not felt like that. I've made mistakes. I've had failures as a believer over the last 20 years. I've never felt defeat. This was the first time I had truly felt discouragement, defeat. And it felt like everything we had endured and everything else for this movie to get it done. And this is how it's going to end. And I felt defeat. I felt like, maybe we didn't do what God wanted us to do. Maybe God had abandoned us. And I knew intellectually that wasn't right, but emotionally that's the way I felt. I just incredibly defeated. I
want to be clear with my audience because I listened to the podcast yesterday, and I want to say again, I just don't ever listen to podcasts, but it was very moving. You tell this whole story, and it affected me very much, Steve, because like you, not to this extent, but I'm in a spiritual battle, and sometimes it gets tough. Sometimes it gets very discouraging. You went to the mat and created this great film, and I know, as somebody who does stuff, sometimes things don't, you say, Lord, this isn't doing as well as I had hoped. I poured myself into this. I know the level of excellence. Why, Lord? What's going on? I mean, to sell a film in this day and age with all the demonic stuff that's out there, all the garbage that's out there, to try to get a film that is pointedly about the spiritual reality. I mean, you talk about, going where you're not supposed to go in Hollywood or in the culture. You went there in spades. You deal with the unborn, the abortion, and very, very powerful. And then the film doesn't do what you had hoped. Now, this happens all the time. Making a Christian film, making this kind of a film, to get it out, to get it distributed, to get the word out, even to Christians, many of whom are either lazy or they just don't care. They're too busy. They don't feel like I need to see this film because it's the right thing to do, even when it's a good film. And so that was part of what was going on with you, that there was some disappointment in the natural. Yeah.
And in the natural, I'm as sick as I had been in many, many, many years. And as the day went on, I could feel this resolve out of nowhere hitting me. And I'm confident that was the prayers of the righteous availing much. And they found another makeshift room for me in an observational wing, but it would at least give us some privacy. We could at least have one visitor come in. And so like a pastor of the Moms for Liberty group could come in and pray with me. I'm getting more encouraged as the day goes on, but all the fevers and everything are all still there. And because this is overcrowded, my wife has to go home at 8:00. And right as she gets ready to go home, I tweet out, it's just going to be me, God, and the enemy alone in this room for the next 24 hours. I had a sense something was coming. I just wasn't sure what it was. And shortly after that, I fell asleep. I woke up about an hour later, shortly before 9, and I'm as hot as I have been this entire time. And I've got heat rashes up and down my legs. I've got the MRSA antibiotic, two different ones now going in my arms. I'm having allergic reactions to them. I still don't have the blood culture back. I don't know if it's in my system or not. And I just had this overwhelming sensation or conviction that I needed to get up, rise, and walk. And I asked the nurse, can we detach the IVs for just a few minutes for me to walk and stretch out my legs? And they said yes, because they're worried about blood clots in those settings. So they want you to get a little some circulation going. Before I knew it, I had walked 3 hours in this C-section corridor in this hospital, over 9 kilometers, which I think is over 5 miles. I stopped briefly for water and to check my temperature because I just started sweating and started breaking these fevers. I had very bad pain in one of the IV arms, and the pain just went away. And it's the most intimate encounter with the Lord I've ever had since the night of my salvation.
I want to say, before we're going to go to a break here, we'll be back much more with Steve Deace, but you had an encounter with God, a real encounter with the Lord, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. It's an amazing thing that you walked and walked and walked and walked in this sick condition around this hospital, around, and you had an encounter with God, which you talk about on your podcast, but just tell my audience so they can understand something of what it was that you experienced, because it's moving.
It was like nothing else in the world existed. My wife and I have a very strong bond. My children and I have a very strong bond. I'd lose a piece of my heart if I lost any of them. And it was like they didn't exist. It's like nothing in the world existed except just me and the Lord. And, I didn't get like a megaphone or anything of that nature, but there were some things that I clearly heard in my heart that I knew were not from me. One of the things I heard was that I need apostles, not assassins.
That's an amazing line. I forgot that line. That's the line in your podcast. You mentioned that. And when you say you heard that, you didn't hear an audible voice. You didn't see the letter spelled out, but in your spirit, man, you got that. Yep. That the Lord's saying to you, I need apostles, not assassins. And what did you sense that God is trying to say to you, you've been taking this battle too much on in the flesh. There's too much of you fighting and not enough of letting me fight through you?
Having too much faith in the gifts he has given me and not enough faith in the gift giver. And remembering that there is no way to save America without saving actual Americans. Many of the people that are making these demonic and destructive choices, they're broken. They don't know the cell door is open and they can walk out. But that light, they fear like they're not good enough for it, that it's strange. They can't trust it. And so they retreat even more and more into the darkness. And of course, the church for the last generation, frankly, has just not taken discipleship, catechesis, and these kinds of things seriously.
Well, that's important you say discipleship, catechesis, because I write about this to some extent in my book, Letter to the American Church. We've gotten big on evangelism. It's like, people need to meet Jesus. People need to meet Jesus. It's like, well, guess what? That's the starting line. From there, we need to lead people into a biblical worldview, into a deeper relationship with Jesus, not just like, I check the box, I believe in him, whatever. Right. And you're quite right that for a long time, we've avoided that. We've avoided the depth of the spiritual walk. And so the Lord said to you, I need apostles, not assassins. Wow.
Yeah, they don't know. We don't know if we're dealing with Ninevites or Sodomites. Are we dealing with sheep or wolves? We don't know. Augustine famously said there are many sheep without, but many wolves within. I think that is a very apt description of what we are facing in the West right now. And one of the other things I clearly heard in my spirit was a sense that I'm about to lose hope, and that lots of us are about to lose hope, and to not give up doing good, to keep doing good, to keep trying to win your spouse, to keep trying to reach your child who thinks they're struggling with their gender identity. They're not listening now. Don't quit. Don't give up doing good. Keep doing good. That it's really not more complicated than that. What is it we're supposed to do? What's the plan? What's the show to watch? What's the network to tune into? Who's the perfect candidate to vote for? What's the perfect process to follow? Do good. Do good in every vessel, platform, angle, relationship you have. Don't give up doing good. that it's really not any more complicated than that.
When I heard the podcast yesterday, your podcast, and I'll say it for the fifth time, I don't listen to podcasts, but it really affected me. And this is before I was already going to have you on this program just to talk, but I listened to it, and I was myself, for reasons I won't go into, but just pretty discouraged in a way that I'm normally not. I could feel the spiritual warfare. And yesterday evening, I spoke with a friend, a dear friend, great man of faith, who was himself deeply discouraged. And I was thinking about what you'd said on your podcast, and I knew we are in a battle. The enemy is trying to lie to us and tell us, you just need to quit. You just need to just forget about it. God is not, he's not going to take care of you. He's not going to, do the stuff you think he's going to do. Quit. And there are many in the church today who have given up, and they have basically said, you know what? It's done. God has already judged us. What's the point of fighting? That's the voice of the devil, ladies and gentlemen. The Lord encouraged you. Tell us more about how he was encouraging you about not to give up, to talk about that.
I think we are losing hope because we have a sense that there's nothing we can do, that God will not help us, will not save us, or won't save us the way that we want him to, that we're too far gone. We're dealing with things that are overwhelming, and God made it very clear to me that he has given me prodigious gifts, but they're nothing. They're absolutely nothing compared to what he can do all on his own. And he wants us to remember that we're losing hope because we have forgotten he's the clear hero of the story. It's not our pet cause. These things are all important. I don't want to say this in a sweater vested kiki or plaited khaki pastor way to talk you out of getting involved and being. It's what I do full time. That's my own ministry. I'm talking about what's the first thing here. Put things in the right priority here. Jesus said, "I am the vine, you are the branch. Those who remain in me can produce much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing." Even if our motivations are great, if we separate whatever we're trying to do for good in our lives from him, it cannot be successful. And that, I think, frankly, Eric, just in my own analysis, that's the difference between the American and the French Revolution. You saw the blessing of providence in the American Revolution. How does the French Revolution end? Roll out the guillotines, and here comes the reign of terror. And I sense a lot of our people are getting black-pilled like this. They're thinking, vote populi, power to the people. The people are sinners. Even the ones on the right side of the issues are themselves sinners. Okay? That's what reliance on divine providence meant. That was men who understood their own sinfulness. Some of the men that signed that declaration went home to their own slaves. They understood they were morally compromised. They knew they had no chance to succeed in this mission without divine providence. Okay, the rectitude of they asked for God to judge the motivations, the rectitude of their actions. They literally said, if what we're doing is wrong, don't let it be successful.
Amen.
The level of humility in that document, amongst all the great academic terms and words, is extraordinary, and that's what's missing. I got to have more of it in my own walk, in my own calling, and we need more of this amongst ourselves as God's people.
Well, it's interesting because I've recently been saying this a few times, that when people say, well, Eric, do you have hope for America? Do you have hope for the... And I say, listen, we're in a battle. We're in a war. It is a spiritual war, ultimately. It's between good and evil. This is what Tucker said the other day. Even the Episcopalians understand what is really happening. Mm-hmm. It's a battle between good and evil. And when George Washington was fighting in a battle between good and evil, in the natural, he ought to have lost. In the natural, the American rebels, the colonists, ought to have been defeated. In the natural, if you said, what do you predict? That's the prediction. They should have lost the Battle of Long Island, the Battle of Brooklyn. They ought to have been crushed. But if you keep fighting and you look to the Lord can miraculously give you the victory. If the Lord doesn't miraculously give you the victory, you probably won't win. So either you rely on him and keep fighting, or you lose, because there are no guarantees. Apart from him, it's true, we can do nothing. But there are a lot of people that they don't know that that's true. And so when people say, don't fight, just give up, don't do anything, I think, no, you're supposed to do everything you can possibly do. If you sit on your hands and are a fatalist, that's not a biblical worldview. You've got to do everything you can do, but don't be fooled that that's enough. Washington, he didn't sit on his hands. They fought, but in the natural, there was no guarantee. And so if you fight and you look to the Lord and the Lord decides to bless it, the Lord can do miracles. The Lord does miracles. Yeah. But it's kind of like you've got to understand how that works. And so it's just amazing to me that God would speak that to you, because you have been in the battle. You shared earlier about the spiritual warfare. That is real. A lot of people just kind of sneer. They don't understand. That is totally real.
I think in the end, the American church has sought an assembly of a mass group of people. What the Word of God does is it clarifies who we are as people, right? The first Joshua says, choose ye this day whom you will serve. The second Joshua says, no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me sends them to me, and then I will only raise them up on the last day. He says, my sheep hear my voice. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Enter through the narrow gate. And clarity is what the kingdom of God operates on, the currency of clarity. And I think we just have to we have to fight and persevere for the motivation of glorifying God, and with the expectation that if we do that, he will then use us to glorify himself, as opposed to our own humanistic efforts. I think there's two temptations, Eric. One is to lose hope. The other is to become the generation of Jeremiah's time. No, the Lord won't punish us. We're special. We won't be judged. And don't lose your hope. Don't lose humility.
We gotta pick that right up on the other side of the break, folks. Very important. Very important. We'll be right back. Say that again. The temptation on the left and the temptation on the right. Temptation on one side, temptation on the other.
Well, and I broke them both, Eric. I violated them both. I lost my hope, and we talked about that, but I also lost my humility. The idea that because I had done these things for the Lord, that therefore I should expect the sort of reward that I was expecting for it. When in reality, it's the honor of doing them for the Lord, regardless, in and of itself is the honor. What did the apostles say? To suffer for the name, that was the honor. That was the honor. To be called to witness to that level, that in and of itself was the honor. And so I think we have to also make sure that we don't lose our humility. Let us not become the generation of Jeremiah's time, who was confident in our cultural heritage and our institutions. They even said to him, hey, while the temple still stands, we would never be judged. They had lost their humility. We can't lose either our hope or our humility.